Bonjour, goedemiddag, bienvenue, good afternoon. This is, I think, the second screening that L'Âge d'Or in Cinematheque dedicated to the work of Joanna Hajitoma and Khalil Joreige. The day before yesterday we saw Je veux voir and Ronde. Yesterday was also a masterclass with Joanna. Today we're going to see two films, and they were made with about decades in between. The last film was made in 2003, and the Lebanese Rocket Society was finished in 2012. But it's, I think, in a sense, a bit of a happy coincidence or a happy accident, like there are many in the work of Joanna and Khalil, that they are being shown together, or one after the other. Because there's quite a few resonances in between, and one of them is the impetus. Both films start with a search for lost images, a search for something that is absent. And in the course of the search, something becomes present. It generates new visibilities. But I won't say too much about the films, because we are very happy to have Khalil here with us. So please give him a warm applause.
Thank you for the invitation. It's always weird to talk before, but we will have a very quick chat before, so I'm happy to be with you and to share with you some of our journey into cinema and images.
No, so there will be a short discussion after the last film, I think, and then we're going to see the second film, and after that there will be a longer discussion for about an hour, I think, or more than an hour. So please join us for the whole journey. Thanks, and see you afterwards. I think we have 15 or 20 minutes to ask questions about this film, and then you can see the second one. Maybe we can start trying to contextualize this film a bit. It was made in 2003, and I think at that time the notion, the idea of absence was very much at the heart of your work. To work or to play around absent images in order to tear them away from dominant representations, dominant discourse. So at the moment when you got this news that the print of your film was lost, did you immediately make a connection between your work? Did you immediately see the potential?
No, we are never such a clever person. We have to go step by step. So as we are seeing it at the beginning, you need different signs to be able to connect them. You see a first one, then the second one, the third one. So basically what happened is that we started then in 2000. It ended in 2003, but because it's a long process to be able to put together all the signs and events. What happened is that at the beginning you are struck by this idea that a copy of your film has disappeared there. Of course it's a copy, meaning that it's not the whole film. So at the beginning you say, it's strange. Then you receive what we got at the end, this small pieces, extract that have been cut by the censorship. You found here a connection. And this is what will lead you. And you go there and you don't know what you're going to do. So basically what we did, we shot a film. The images you are seeing here are not the images that we were expecting to shoot about the film. It's a very different aesthetic of our film at that moment. It was scouting. So through these images, it was not made to be edited. So it's just after, when we were unable to go there and to shoot the film, that another structure started to appear.
It's true, even within the film, there's a multiplicity of resonances, even inversions, paradoxes. Like this wonderful scene where where you can see that they leave no traces. They leave no traces of images. While your film is just the inverse. You look for traces of something that has been lost. And also, of course, this moment that you mentioned, the fact that the images that are remaining are the ones that were supposed to be censored, that were supposed to be cut away. So this leads me to this thing that is very impressive about your research, and this confidence. confidence that something will happen. This confidence that something will lead to something interesting. And I think you can also see it in Je veux voir, you could also see it in the Lebanese Rocket Society.
It's not a confidence, it's just to be actually working in such production allowed us to be able, if nothing has happened, of not doing it. Meaning that it's not that we have to deliver a film because we are struck with a production team and everything. Meaning, in our research, Joanne and me, we always wait for something to happen, to displace our gaze, our perspective, our approach about the subject. It's not, it's too planned. We feel uncomfortable with it. So we are always waiting for, because this is for me what is at the heart of the cinema and of art. It's this notion of encounter where it's not me, it's not them, it's the real, it's something else that will happen. It's very Bressonian in a way. Meaning this encounter in a particular situation will make you believe in the images or in the situation that you are living.
Yeah. That also means that, especially in this film, you question your own position as filmmakers, as people who make images. And it's very striking in this film that you also question your own imaginary about this place, about this situation. So in a sense, you get struck between two kinds of ways of thinking about imageries or images. You have these consensual images, for example, these images that speak about the unification of the country. And on the other hand, you have this risk of orientalization, this gaze from the outside, that is maybe also present in the way you think. So when did you find out? When did you start thinking about this film is going to be about this?
From the beginning, the question of the Orientalism was at the heart of our practices because it's. John and me, we didn't study art or cinema. We came from a very different background, and the question of the Orientalism, and especially Edouard Said, at that moment, was at the heart of certain critics that we had towards the images that others were producing. So, it's always easy to make a critic of the other practice. What are you going to do when you are going to be in the position of the people you are used to critic? Basically, our trip to Yemen was our Orientalist trip. So, can we get out of this trap that is always Orientalist perspective? And it was by working on this whole on trying not to always find linearity and be in the dominant position of the people who can masterize all the meanings that you are facing to. So it was very interesting. At the beginning, this was maybe one of the interests that we had. And suddenly, when the film had the problem because of 9/11, and another layer started. So it's what's interesting is the way that you can keep the several layers in the same time without taking them out, but it's just you work on the opacity of a layer and another and so on.
So it means that the editing process is really terrifying and challenging because everything comes together there. No? That's the moment.
Yeah, but we are a very complex person. I mean, everybody's complex. I mean, it's just you still have the taste of the different layers. You see, you are aware of that, so you put them without thinking about them. It's just the way that you work. You have to accept to keep this layer. The complexity or the heterogeneity of the different approach. Yeah.
You mentioned, of course, 9/11. Everything changed in terms of representation, in terms of perception of the region. Did you feel that all of a sudden something else was at stake in making the film?
What happened Okay, at the beginning when we were producing the first version of the film, it was with a production company called Diallo Jones, and we had support of a TV, a French TV. And we went out of, we were very happy because it was the first time we were working with a TV like this, and it was a guy, we can say it, his name is Thierry Garel, actually. And for people who work in documentary, you know them. And suddenly, after 9/11, we had another encounter, and he said this word, your work is today anecdotal. You should work on bin Laden's family, as a Yemeni family. We cannot do a film on the loss of your film when we have the bin Laden family.
Because it's just an anecdote. So.
It's an anecdote. And we went out from his office, and this word anecdote was really resonating in our mind, and strangely, it's, and we look at it in the dictionary, and we found that the word anecdote came originally from a story kept secret, another kind of storytelling. And suddenly we were thinking about a possibility of getting out of the latency, but to work exactly on our anecdote, meaning that it's not because we were always into a huge narrative, because in our region we are always, there's always a huge narrative, a catastrophe that is beat over us, that we cannot work where we are on a very domestic level, meaning as Khalil and Joanna, as a small filmmaker who don't want to deal always with a big narrative, but working very locally and specifically on certain points. And this is how this subject becomes a necessity for us, because it's always about necessity. Yeah. So it was not anymore an anecdote in the bad meaning, and like a small story. It was very a personal story. I don't need to talk only about terrorism, Islam, or women issue. I'm not saying that it's not a big issue, but I can work also on issues that other people can share, like on this notion of contemporary.
So the anecdote was a different way to approach history, small history as opposed to the big rhetorical.
Yeah, and our position. It was really a political position. It's come where and you talk.
Sorry, do you have any questions? Or remarks? Otherwise, we can make a bridge to the second film then?
Yeah.
Hello, for the people who weren't here before, we spoke a bit about the lost film, and we ended the conversation with this idea, the notion of the anecdotal history. And maybe we can make the bridge to this film that we're going to see, the Lebanese Rocket Society, which is a film that was made almost 10 years after the lost film. Do you consider the history, the story that was at the basis of this film also anecdotal?
More than anecdotal, because when we started this project, actually everybody was thinking that we were doing a joke. When you came and saying that we are working on the space project in Lebanon, it was really for everybody a joke, because nobody was remembering it. And even our producer was saying, do your film now, stop doing your research and things like this. So it was about this anecdote. And little by little, again, by how you, the work on the layering would start to give you another dimension about this. And there is another consideration about the two, the political background. Like the first film for the last film, it was 9/11, and now it was the Arab Spring. So you have to, also you are structured by a political environment. Yeah, a political environment that pushes you to see things in a different way.
Just by way of introduction, Unless you have questions like beforehand, we're gonna see the film, and afterwards I think we have 1 hour or even more than 1 hour to really discuss what we have seen. So again, thank you, Khalil, for being here. Give him a warm applause. And we'll see you after the film.
And in this one, we have a true story that become a fiction. And when we continue in that work, in that logic, actually, the last project we did was on the spam, the internet spam, where you have fictions, because it's not just digital, but it's also scams, like people saying, I'm the son of Mubarak, Gaddafi, or whoever, I have million, if you help me, you will get some percentage of this. And these scams are very efficient. So there is a relation that make you believe in a story or not, make you understand or think that this story is possible or not. So this is why we were interested in this. What happened in our imaginary for such an adventure became impossible.
The question is one really of credibility, of conceivability. In which conditions can we believe a certain image or a certain fiction, a certain narrative? So all of a sudden you became conscious of this story, the story of the Lebanese space program. I think you already started researching in 2000, very, very early on.
In our work, we always start and put some marks, and the process continues. But there is also something a little bit different, because in the process of doing, you discover a lot of things. Meaning at the beginning you put just some hints, you wait to see how it will evolve and things like this. So, and there's another common point between the Lost Film and the Lebanese Rocket Society. It's in both cases we shot a film that was not the one that we were editing. Meaning that in the Lebanese Rocket Society, we shot a film, a beautiful film, I swear. That was very closer to our fiction films, meaning it was made of slow traveling, tracking shots in the city, trying to work on this melancholia about missing images. Because for a while, we saw that if there was a gap in our history, in our memory, it was due to a lack of images. So with the help of Jean Lapoiré, with whom we did our fictions, we shot a beautiful film, but suddenly the missing images was not the problem. Because we found
the images.
And even if we found, for the first time, we had all the elements of the narrative. And having all this narrative was not, so it was not a problem of image. It was something else. It was beyond image. So we had to throw once again the beautiful film.
It's very striking that, because it was really, I guess, a turning point, finding all these images that you thought were lacking, that you thought were absent. And all of a sudden, the film that you get to see is also the most linear, also the most traditional in a way that you ever made. It tells the history from a certain A to a certain B. Was that really? Did you really have to rethink your own practice as filmmakers? Was it really hard to all of a sudden engage with this kind of storytelling?
Yeah, because first you are afraid to make a linear film, meaning that people will say that the market is. No, but actually. It's linked to the first question about a context, how a context is affecting you. If we were having, if we were working so much on states instead of narrative, it's because we were stuck into this present. We had a lot of gap that we was not allowing us to have this linearity. And for the first time, we had all the elements. to tell the story. So why we are not going to tell it? It's an ethical thing, meaning that especially that the people who tell you the story are dying at the same time that they are. Because between the moment that they tell you the story and the editing, you feel that they give you something that, and you have all the elements. It's like in an archive. As soon as you manage to put the right index, you are able to find in the archive what it is about. It's not, there's still a lot of work. So yes, this is what forced us to tell the story. Of course, after there's another layer, it's the arts that came into it, and even the animation. At the beginning, the animation was not about a Uchronia. It was more to, because we were convinced that because it's a lack of images, by the drawings, we want to compensate the lack of images. So also, all this process was shown.
So you were forced to bring in this, let's say, performative aspect, and bringing in a certain fictional element in the present, in the form of this rocket. This came at that moment, and this intervention in the real, this idea to really build, construct the rockets, came as an answer or as a response to having all of a sudden this history.
Yeah, because we were afraid about this idea of nostalgia, of saying, especially in places where you are facing a lot of trouble, in those troubled times, like it was better before, or things like this. So how can you take this element and reactivate it in a present? How a past can be reactivated in a present? So it's also, there's another link with Catherine, with the film with Catherine Deneuve and Rabia about Je veux voir, is to consider that the cinema or the art is at least places where you can fight against the shrinking of your territory. Meaning that the film with Catherine Deneuve happened when we were for Joanna and me, when we were just trying to make a short video at the border. Suddenly the Israeli army, the Lebanese army, Hezbollah, the UNIFIL, everybody came to forbid us and to quit here. So at that moment we said, okay, if we bring a team of cinema, meaning not just the 5 of us and things like, no, I'm talking about 20 trucks and the material and everything. Will we be allowed to come here and shoot again? Okay, so let's bring a star. Let's bring Catherine Deneuve. Will we be able to reoccupy this territory, even for a brief moment, for just to open a street? So it's exactly the opposite of Pedro Costa when he's talking about, we are talking about a colonization of the territory. Because this is how we see the crew. And it's true, sometimes when you bring a crew, it's huge. So here it's the same thing. It's only because we are considering that it's a sculpture or it's a props in a film that we are being able to ship it through the country. So it's we are fighting against the shrinking of the meaning. Being from a rocket, it's becoming a missile. So no, let's open.
That's basically it's through a certain. By bringing in a certain artificiality that you start questioning reality. This framework that we call reality, which is perhaps one of the most necessary or most urgent tasks of art or cinema today, and this question of artificiality and fiction. But I wanted to also ask you about the idea of science fiction, because you mentioned this animation, which is basically a science fiction told from perspective from the 60s, I think. But I think you told before that science fiction has always been a problem in the region. That there has also always been a lack of science fiction, of projecting something in the future. Is that tied to this problem of narration, of representation, you think? This lack of science fiction?
It's actually there's nearly no science fiction, neither in novel or films or, and we were wondering why. So in this film we try to see several possibilities. One of them is this problem with the concept of a future, projecting ourselves into a future, the possibility to share also research in technology. There is a lot of possibility. A lot of persons after the film start to think about this lack of science fiction. But for us, it was really linked to this Anna Arendt novel about the crisis of the culture, where she's taking this Kafka example about a person struck between a past that is pushing him forward and the future. So he's standing in this breach of the present, which is unstable, and you have to be able to stand on this instability. So for us, at least, if we manage to create a continuity, maybe we will be able to start to think about the possibility of the future and maybe a science fiction.
You can feel it, especially in the world of contemporary art. I think this attention, this focus on virtualities or potentialities, on histories that have been occluded, that have not been finished, that might still be actualized. And, for example, the work of the other group on Pan-Africanism or Mathieu Aponik. Do you feel connected to this movement? Can you really feel that there's a questioning all over of?
It's the thing that when we start to work on the film, and that we felt that with the Arab Spring something was happening, it was really a moment where we were having this idea of a possible dreaming of something different. Meaning whatever was the result of this Arab Spring, and sometimes the result was even worse than before, but at least we get out of the naturalization of the power and the state. Meaning that it's not normal, it's a fight, you see? So, so for us it was really something interesting to consider that it's not an ontology. It's not because we are Arabs. It had nothing to do with this. So we had to be able to rethink about the possibility of being here and now. And this is why the defeat of '67 started to appear as something really important in this film.
That's the moment when the imaginary started transforming.
Yeah, or what we are living now. It's meaning that if we have to face the West, and if the West is modern, so let's not be modern. Let's be fundamentalist. For example, this can be also an answer as a reaction to the West. But as soon as you start to think about the territory not anymore as a geography but as a time conception, being contemporary, meaning sharing the same temporality, suddenly you are not facing this issue anymore.
And you can think in this context, you also talked about this idea of Bach, this lectures that he gave on how to live together, and this idea of sharing the same rhythms, let's say. Does anyone want to intervene or have questions? Otherwise, I can just continue. Okay. I want to go back to, you mentioned your new project on scamming, on spamming, which is also very much a project about fiction and a project about belief. But this also brings into light the question of cinema, because cinema plays with illusions. It's a play with the real and the possible always. So the question of cinema is always at what point do you decide to be fooled by appearances? And me personally, I have the impression when you talk about cinema today, there's also a problem of fiction, and that there always has to be an attestation of reality. There always has to be a sense of the real that is very present. Otherwise, the fiction doesn't work, isn't credible anymore. And I was wondering, through your project on SPAN, on SCAN, what you discovered for yourself about this question of credibility. At which point is a fiction credible today, in comparison, for example, to the moment of the 60s when there were really strong belief systems, in comparison to today, when we have very weak belief systems?
There's something that is at the heart of the system of belief. It's this notion of what we define as imaginary. It's like an imaginary is not the right word in English, because imaginary means fiction in English a little bit. For us, imaginary is a kind of structure and background. It's a knowledge about certain situation. It's a contract in terms of belief and proposition. And this is something that, meaning that if I tell you that I have $20 million in cash under my bed, and I tell you this if I'm saying I'm in Belgium, you won't believe me. If I tell you that I'm in Iraq, you will believe me. So certain stories are being possible in certain contexts and not in others. So it's also meaning that you have to work in symptoma, meaning certain location will provide certain way of doing, certain way of dealing with the image, certain way of dealing with fiction. And there's not, of course there is a Hollywood film that is giving you today like tomato, it's the same kind of tomato everywhere. But this is done, we say, hors sol, meaning you are not putting it in the ground. You are putting a chemical in the, yeah. So how come when you want to work in a specific ground, what kind of narration, what kind of images you can produce? It's a very simple question, and you know, when now it's easy to think about it like this, but at the beginning it's always very simple to answer the basic question. How can I believe in those questions? Why we start to collect these images? Actually, our file was called Had to Become Rich. Mean that at the beginning we were attempting to answer and become rich. Mean that even I was maybe, I like to believe in those things. It's like when you enter in a theater, you know it's fake, but you are waiting for something to happen, to be an emotion that will lead you to another place that is not anymore the theater. And in film, it's much more powerful. You can forget even the theater.
You need a desire to believe. You need to decide for yourself that you want to believe what you read, what you see.
It's just something that is pushing you outside your border. And it's not just being drunk. It's also keeping your own critic. It's not just about the illusion. Because if not, it will be easier. Let's put some hashish in all the cinema and everybody will be happy. No, it's not about that.
It's also about learning to cope or negotiate with the distance, no? Between you and your presence and appearances out there, which are, in a sense, artificial. It's learning to cope with this distance, perhaps, between you and the fiction.
Yeah, but at the same time, you still feel that it's you. You see what I mean? It's a mystery. I don't understand it, but it's exactly like when you are making an encounter. When you meet somebody, you say, it's me, it's him, but we were somewhere else. Something new, not expected was happened. And this unexpected is for us exactly the heart of all the mystery. Something we were not, if you know what you're gonna see, it's communication for me. This is also a difference between communication and art. When you don't know where you're gonna end it, it's something else.
So to go back to this film, the moment that you put the sculpture in public life, what did you see happening? What did you, of course, you were talking about a fiction that wasn't conceivable, believable by anyone, I think, in Lebanon before you made the film. When you decided, when you put out this rocket on the street, did you feel that this unexpected changed perceptions?
It changed a lot of things. First, the way that the film has been received in Lebanon, it provoked a lot of things that were unbelievable. First, a rewriting of this specific story happened. So now people know the story, and even if the sculpture is still here, people say, no, the sculpture here since the 60s. So, okay, I have no problem. It's not about copywriting and things like that, but it's funny. And now, what happened is also because Lebanon is a very small country, so everybody is always considering that they know everything about their neighbors, but really everything. And suddenly, because they were struck by the story, like they start to believe that there is mystery between them. And we are receiving a lot of other stories, like the guy who invents the speediest weapon in the world. It's not another guy who invents a laser. You see, we are receiving a lot of other story kept secret that
secret
history really, but no, we are not working like this. But what is interesting is this idea of shifting a certain gaze on our own history. It was funny.
Anyone yet? The very timid audience.
We can talk a lot, but yeah.
Hello. I saw that in both of the films you give such an importance to your subjectivity, to yourself, to your emotion, and to your sensation. Why it is so important to you to put your emotion in the narration? Something that we can't touch, we can't see, because you need to speak about that, to tell the people that you are afraid, that you, I don't know, you are surprised by something, so on.
Probably because our film and our practice is linked to a life project, and I'm working with somebody. And starting from this point, it's very difficult to share subjectivity. Not just a little bit easier to share my subjectivity with Juliano than you. Meaning that there is a kind of negotiation of subjectivities that you can see inside, in the process of doing, where we have to be, it's not about subjectivity. Our work is not, this is also an important thing, because a lot of people always consider that working in Lebanon is because we have to deal with a lack of memory. We have no problem with memory, but we have problem with history, meaning that it's not about subjectivity. It's about how we can share together a common writing. You see? So it's, for us, it's how we can go out of our subjectivity by maybe exposing our dialectic in the film. For example, from the beginning, Joanna is taking the tone and I'm taking the tone. Another kind. So I am born in '69. This is what I have been told. There is something that has been told to Joanna, something else that has been told. And we are trying to share it and deconstruct it in the same time together. It's a dialectic. But a dialectic, not Hegelian. It's not, we are finding a solution. Just we are managing to deconstruct together.
in the beginning of your, let's say, career is a very bad word. In the beginning, when you started working together,
Yeah.
there was this necessity, Joanna told about it, this necessity to produce images or to think about images in the terrain, really in Lebanon, to provoke discussions, to provoke reflection on what images mean, how images can relate to history, to memory, and so forth. In a sense, you still are dealing with the same questions, but do you see certain shifts? Because now, of course, the consideration for art has changed, and Lebanon, you yourself have become, let's say, professional artists. Do you feel that there is a change in how you feel this necessity of questioning, or how you relate?
It has a lot of effect, meaning even on our daily life, meaning that before, none of us was, I'm talking about the whole generation, none of us was living from its arts. So we were having other jobs next to it, other jobs that are sometimes very important, like teaching, being critic, or when I was critic, we were both teaching, something like this. So it's not, but we are more focused today on things. But at the same time, we lost a certain common ground with the other artists.
The artists of your generation.
My generation and the youngest. Because now the market is becoming so important that at the beginning we were sharing ideas. I still share ideas with my good friend, but like if you were working in something, I was founding a lot of things, I would give it to you, like this is more your research, you should continue. Now everything is becoming valuable. Everybody's, it's like an archive. Everybody is becoming rich. No, but it's, this is one thing, but at the same time, I don't have the feeling that I change. I still have the feeling that I'm just beginning, that I'm very young, and I feel that I'm young, and nobody would say something different here. No?
Anyone wants to intervene or have questions? No? Okay.
Hello. My question is mainly focused on the last film, Lebanese Rocket Society, and that there is also a work that you made, which is an installation, which is like a protraction of this movie. And I was asking me, where does come this necessity to divide this project in terms of visual arts and film conception? That was my question.
Actually, this is the first film where some of our artwork enters the film and changes. Because usually, with Joanna, we work in bodies of work. We work on art on one side, film on another, but they are together in the same body of work. Here, they had an intervention, meaning the reconstitution of the cedar core is an artwork by itself. It intervened and it changed the narration by itself. This is what we were talking. It was not planned at the beginning. It's just because when you are working for a couple of years on a project, you evolve, and you found that, okay, we were producing this rocket. It happened by pure coincidence that the factory is exactly 50 meters from the original launch pad. It's a sign. Let's think about bringing it back to make the opposite sign. And you see, it's speculation, narrative speculation. It's not at the beginning we had all the idea. It's little by little, because you are moved by a certain situation, by an accident, by a pure hazard. In this film, what we try to do is never to consider that the artwork is a derivative product of the film. It's not taking images of the film and gluing it and putting it in. So what happened is that because the film was about this idea of reactivating the past in the present, we noticed by a pure coincidence that we were using different strategies for this. One of it is the reconstitution. Another one is the reenactment. A third one was the restage. Restage, what happened is very simple. You notice here that we shipped this rocket on a truck in the street. Basically, we were able only to do a documentation about that because we were stressed by the fact that we were crossing the street and we were afraid of being bombed. And really, we take a lot of things about this because we don't want to appear as heroes. Like, meaning the army came 20 times to just check that this rocket was still empty, that you see what I mean. So what we did about this idea of restaging, and it's also linked to what the photographer was saying about the trace of the trace. When he saw this trace of the rocket in the sky, we consider that this is a beautiful image, and for him, no, it's a bad image. So we were having a conflict. So suddenly we decided, okay, let's restage it to be able to take an artistic picture of the shipping of the rocket in the street of Beirut. So instead of doing it with the monument, the reconstitution, we took its silhouette in 2 dimensions. A cardboard, a piece of wood, exactly the same size, the same silhouette. But we put it on the same truck with the same people. But you're not frightened anymore because you look at it from another side, you see a piece of wood. Okay? So let's take it, but let's take it with a performative thing, meaning the crossing of the truck with the rocket on it should be the shutter speed of the image. You understand? So you choose your frame. The rockets will have to pass through the frame. So meaning that you have to make it pass. You have 2 cameras, one digital, one analog. The digital will allow you to say if it was the right shutter speed. It will never work the first time because depending on the speed of the rocket and everything, the time lapse should be the time of the pressing of the rocket. So you have to repeat it several times. Cut the street, make the truck go back, repeat it till you manage to find an artistic image. You see, this is another. It's a restaging. You see, and so there are several things that allowed us to rethink about our practice.
Okay. Unless there's one more question. I think there's another screening now in this room, is it? Okay. Well, thank you, Khalil, for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you all for being here as well. And we can take discussion outside. Why perhaps? Thank you.
Thank you.